So hi, Vickie, Crystalline, and Mr. Edward. So we're sitting there and we're having a wonderful conversation. And uh yeah, just take a deep breath and just kind of center yourself. Yeah, thank you. When you just take this moment just to tap in, just for just the slightest moment, you can feel it. So then you can receive it. And it's just so beautiful. Me and Edward were just talking, and I would like kind of you to go over what you just talked about, how you have felt so tired this year, because this whole year, yeah,
Yeah, I guess where we're going with that was, yeah, it just felt like one like integration of energies after the other. Um, like Friday was one of the few days actually this year which I realized, oh, I actually had loads of energy. But even then, I think I had sort of like a quiet moment after lunchtime. And I'm like, it's just my body keeps on calling me to get like, even if it's just lying down for like 5 minutes, keep on getting called just to like lie down for 5 minutes or something. And then they're actually, I think they're getting shorter now. But it does bring up all your doubts because you're, oh, I should be doing more. It's like, oh, there's such a pattern in the old field about like, oh, being lazy or not working hard enough. And so it always brings that up for me is like when I like being felt exhausted a lot, or maybe exhausted the wrong word. It's just like sometimes it's exhausted, other times it feels like, oh, I've just got so much energy. Like I just can't integrate it if I'm moving around. So much energy coming through. Um, and it's amazing how that brings other things up also to be integrated.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, truly. And the same for me. And Edward was saying that he was, thinking that something was wrong with his body. And I too had the same idea because I've never slept like I have. And actually, it used to be like short naps through this year, but now it's like 4 or 5 hours. I wake up and I'm like blown away. And I've noticed over this last like month and a half, like complete exhaustion. Like I gotta sleep now. I gotta lay down and sleep now. And when you were saying that there's so much energy, I feel that.
Also,
Like,
especially in the middle of the day, like when the sun's at
yes,
the strongest, even if it's not out, I noticed like, oh, actually I have way more energy like in the evenings, like 6 o'clock or something, or like, but when it's right in the middle of the day, it's just like, oh, I'm like, couldn't even like come onto my laptop or like, yeah, it just doesn't, my body's really resistant to that, those sort of times.
and I feel that we need those times. It especially as you're talking about it. Like I notice all my animals, and I have 9 cats in my house right now. So they're all asleep at that time. And it's like the energies that are coming from the sun, it's like our bodies need to rest with.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the peak of summer, it feels
Yeah,
like almost feels like even though it's not super hot here, the energy feels like something like I'd be in the Mediterranean or something where it's like, 35 degrees or something or 40 degrees and like, oh, you just need to, where they've had that for years and years, they just have a nap after lunch.
yeah.
Super
And
interesting.
yeah, it's I'm just really recognized sitting here talking to you how similar, and it always is. Our journeys are so similar, just in a different way. And the last week, me and Ed, and I want to talk about this. Last week, me and Edward got together on a call, and I want to explain what happened for my perception. And so as soon as we were going to connect, he said that the Zoom was glitching, and so I tapped in and I started spinning, and the spinning was so severe. And I felt that a lot, but not for the longevity that I felt this time. that had happened. And it was like everything from the solstice, and I thought it was just for a couple weeks, like all that information, all that parts of me, like was, but it felt like it, through this process over the last couple of days, it felt like it was the whole year, and it just like flowed into me all at one time, like all this energies, all these fractals of me, and they were merging and and moving me out. And as I was listening to Edward, what I recognized is that um, each time he was talking to me, I could feel his words and where they, and it felt like a bouncing off in just different areas of my body. And um, and then I could feel as he's talking, like different parts of me connecting to that word, and then it would just like fade away, or uh, it would move into placement with myself. And then I was really connecting in with the Rainbow Bridge, and actually it showed me, because the spinning started on 7/5, so 2 days before the 7/7/7. And so uh wow. And so I'm getting the word serious. What is that? Like a planet.
Brightest star in the sky.
Oh, that's crazy right now. Thank you. So it was like I feel like a position there. And so wow, I just felt myself completely like balanced right now.
I feel
And
like the fifth might be when it aligns, or when it first comes back up in like Egypt. I think the fifth was like a
wow,
big date then. And obviously it goes through into like August and the Lion's Gate, but I think maybe fifth marks the start of it
wow,
reappearing in the sky. Might be wrong about that, but I seem to remember looking at it a couple of years ago.
that feels correct to me. It feels like my whole body went into balance, and like my solar plex right now is like expanded. I can feel it, like it feels real open. My heart too, but my solar plex feels real open right now. And wow. So on the Rainbow Bridge, it was showing me like the fabrics that we weave. So as Edward was talking to me last week, I could see, we were talking about abundance, I could see the weaving of the tapestry, like the colors just moving very, just like with flow, being, being sewn into place. And then when we would talk about things that were, I would say, lack, and I could feel it like slowing down, kind of like barely moving, and even coming to a stop at a point. And what I recognized is it was showing me my abilities to tap in, and how I'm seeing it in a higher perception. So after I got off with Edward, I felt myself merge. I As soon as I got off with you last week, I instantly, because I started throwing up and everything, and I was like throwing up from the collective when I was on with Edward. It was like I was like an ayahuasca experience. It was like,
When you were describing it this time, I didn't realize at the time, but what you described, I had a very similar experience. And I didn't have any of the spinning then, but I remember when I went to Avebury a couple of years ago, then I was doing a ceremony and I had the tobacco, and we weren't doing the ceremony at Avebury, but we'd been there all day. And then when I came back to where we were doing the ceremony in the woods and I had the tobacco, it was like everything from those stones was just then like grounding through me into that spot. And it felt
yeah,
like I was just spinning and I couldn't even lie down. I had to be on my feet. It was weird because when I lied down, the spinning was huge. Just a
wow.
super interesting experience. But I felt like was just reminded about that when you were talking, like I was the same sort of like bringing of everything together.
Yeah. And at those times we're merging, because I've had them, and I've had like, you like a walk-in. where it's a different part of myself walk in. I could feel it, and I can always feel myself kind of like step away. But this one was like my whole being, every fractal I am, fractaled into me to be who I am today. And what I've noticed is that um, like my abilities are heightened, but even my triggers are heightened also. Like I was around my grandson and I had to go, we were at the creek, and so I had to keep going and put myself, because he was triggering me, and it was like, you know how you get stuck in the whys, and it was like it was creating loops, and I was just like, put it in the water, put it in the water, and let it flow. And I just really felt that we get caught up in, we don't have to figure out why, we just got to just let it go, and so I just, and then it just released it. So, and this merging of my higher self, it's like we merged into one. And like I was walking when I was out building with my granddaughter, and I remember I went to go take a step, and I was like, how do I do this? That thought came into my mind, and I felt that that was us merging together, a piece, you know what I mean? That just needed to, oh, your baby. Hey, little Leo, how you doing? Perfect timing. Hi. So it just really feels like, all these pieces of myself just come together. And what timing with the child self, because I felt that, because when I was with my grandkids, and I was just like, I'm part of that. That's who I am. And I'm parts of all these pieces that make up Vickie. And how much gratitude for this beautiful life, you know, how we are all moving into a conscious body being, all fractals of ourselves. And
Yeah, yeah, that gratitude, that was the big feeling that we had at the beach on Friday. So perfect. And it'd been like, it was quite a long drive to get there and then quite a long walk. But then you just realize, oh, like even just for one moment there, it was all worth it. And
yes,
to feel like that's what's sort of coming to a head on Earth, it just feels like, oh, those moments are just about to like expand so much. The real sort of feels like they're the truest moments. Like
yes,
that's like the they're the purest, but also the truest of like reality, what we actually are.
yeah,
And the rest of it is almost just like a conditioning to get us to appreciate what we really are.
yes. It is.
Um,
And I know, just like you think, we're not doing a lot, but actually we're doing so much. And we don't got to be doing, we're doing so much, and just being, just sitting and tapping in. And I just feel very grateful. I feel very grateful, and I feel very abundant. And I feel the difference in myself. And it feels so beautiful. So, and to experience this with Edward, when I was like, I, you know, I don't know, it just makes me kind of laugh. It's just like a sick child to a parent. It was just like, hold me. That's what it felt like. He was holding the energy as I was going through the experience, because it was intense. And the blast that was coming out of my solar plexus, it was like the heat that was coming out. That lasted for the 2 days. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because I feel like I've been in the other seat before as well that you were in.
Yes.
You need someone to hold it. Um, but it also feels like whoever's doing that bit, which is definitely the tough bit,
Yes.
um, is doing it for everyone. Like they're transmuting all the energies
Yes.
like in the well, especially close them to in the field, but depending like can be pretty
Yeah.
big field,
Very big.
wide field, yeah.
Yeah. And how powerful.
Mm.
It is very powerful. And yeah. So great. I feel this like completion right now. So, if you guys are going through this, rest, and um be gentle with our bodies. I keep getting that message. I think we can be hard on ourselves. I can on my own self because I want to get up and move. I've always been a mover and a doer. And when my body's like, no, rest. That's why I've been doing it for so many hours in one day. And then I'll go right back to bed and sleep for 12 hours. So there's a lot of, you know, energy that's being moved and it's growing and expanding me and changing me and
And
like,
also, if you feel like you do need to do something, it's so good to be like pottering outside. I keep on finding jobs for myself to do outside, and that sort of grounds the energy in much better than being inside.
yes,
The
absolutely.
wind is so good at bringing
Yeah,
those transmuting those energies.
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. So as things heat up, I would just ground in like Edward said.
Yeah, water and wind.
Yes, water and wind. Yeah, we've had a lot of that. No
Mm.
water. I haven't drinking a lot of it. Big time. So is there anything you want to say before I sign off here?
No, I feel very complete. Yeah, I feel like we're just sort of starting a new chapter as well. Quite
That's what it
excited.
feels like. Absolutely. I send love to all of you. We got this.